most great businesses that grow quickly have a product that, is great and really solves a problem. And the specific quote is, a product that's so good, people want to tell their friends first for the implied good taste of being, like the people who the first one's like, oh, I use this thing called Airbnb.
Hey guys, welcome to the UpNext podcast, where we are interviewing teen entrepreneurs that are making it big time in the startup world. We are asking the questions we know you want to hear. UpNext is an app made for teens where anyone can join or build a real life startup.
And our guest today is Anthony Collias, a 25-year-old entrepreneur based in the UK. He founded two different companies, which is very eco-friendly, TreePoints and Stasher.
That's pretty much it, yeah. Just quickly, TreePoints is a carbon offsetting platform for consumers, businesses, and we also have business integrations via API and Shopify that allows you to offset your carbon or plant trees. Exactly, so you can contribute positively to the environment. And Stasher, yes, is a luggage storage network. So typically our users are staying in Airbnbs, and they don't let you in until the afternoon, and then they kick you out in the morning. We connect with the local business all over the world who can store your bags.
That's so cool. I always love hearing about the environmental friendly things that people are coming up with. It really just warms my heart, but really makes me kind of sad that we have to think of these things in the first place. So how did you find yourself creating a business? What sparked the idea? You could talk about both, talk about one of them. I'd love to hear either.
What sparked, to clarify a timeline, sorry for everyone, because it might be helpful.
Right.
My co-founder and I started Stasher after graduating from uni. We were college roommates at Oxford together. And then it's over the past year that we've started TreePoints, because obviously with COVID, we've had a lot of free time. What sparked the specific idea for Stasher was that I was living in central London with my brother between two major train stations. And we just always had people asking to leave stuff at our apartment.
Really?
Yeah. So the original idea was actually slightly different. The original idea was just a platform for storage, however people want to use it. And we just realized that actually it was, we did a little research into the long-term market in people's homes, and we realized that there were some flaws with that. Won't bother going into the specifics, but long story short, we realized that short-term storage was a much more acute need that wasn't being served, and working with businesses made a lot more financial sense and was a better customer experience. So that's how we kind of ended up doing that.
I mean, that's very innovative. I have to say, it's like I said, it's like the Airbnb of storage. So while building those businesses, who do you consider being your first mentor, and how did they even help you go through everything? Was it someone new in your life, or was it family?
So I would say, in one sense, my dad is a great mentor and a guide to me, because I think something that he taught me, maybe not explicitly, maybe just inadvertently by him going about his own business, was that ownership, actually, because he was a owning partner in a business. One thing that we kind of realized, maybe not explicitly, like I said, was ownership is actually, if your aim is to make money, I don't think that that's my personal driver, but it's never a bad thing to
Right. Always a plus.
It's always a plus, yeah. You realize, look at the richest people in the world. None of them make it from income. All of them make it from ownership, right? So try and own the thing that you're doing. As soon as possible, whatever work it is that you're doing, stop doing it for other people and try and own the thing that you're doing it for. So that was one thing, and general business acumen, definitely from my dad. And then specific to what we're doing, I think probably our first angel investor was kind of the first mentor. A lot of the investors actually kind of have gone on to kind of be mentors at different stages. So the first angel investor was CEO of Big Yellow Storage, which is a self-storage company. And again, just, excellent business knowledge. It's a FTSE 250 company, so it's like multi-billion pound. Then like kind of the next stage was the kind of investors we had who were venture capitalists, and David Soskin from How's That? He made cheapflights.com. Apostolos from Venture Friends, a Greek fund. Both of them really kind of help us helped us think kind of bigger, like, okay, how do we scale this? How do we think of it as a tech business, not just a business? So I've kind of cheated by giving you 4 answers, but different mentors at different stages.
The more the merrier. Thank you.
Mm.
So as you said before that you were thinking of this whole storage platform and you had a bunch of changes to it at first, and things, slowly moved forward, probably knowing from your audience what they actually want and how to solve this problem. So how would you say, how much time did it take for you to build the first product that you launched that was out there?
Okay, so it's kind of like a paradigm in startups. So I'm sure that this won't be like unfamiliar to people, but we've in both cases, Stasher and TreePoints, we built minimum viable products, which just means like something really cheap and simple that does the base thing, like the minimum amount that we need to kind of validate the idea. In both cases, we've done that and then used that to raise a bit of money to build a better product, to build a real product.
Right.
So in the case of Stasher, actually, we found a third-party software called ShareTribe. Called ShareTribe, which if anyone's looking at making marketplaces, they are like the perfect MVP. Any sort of like buy or rental thing that you'd be thinking of doing. It's basically a marketplace software as a service. So, we just paid a small amount per month for the first few months. We were students, so I think we each put in like £100 and said, we have 3 months to try and see whether we can get anyone to actually make any bookings.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. That sounds like I'm going to write that down. Sounds like a great platform to take advantage of.
Oh, actually, and then another one that I should mention, sorry. And this was less true 5 to 10 years ago when we built Stasher, but now 100% true. Unless you're building some sort of deep tech platform where like the differentiator is your tech, there are so many great low code and no code solutions nowadays.
Right.
You have no excuse to not build the MVP yourself. So we built the TreePoints MVP ourselves in bubble.io, and it took us a month. And it makes you think like a developer, but you don't need to actually write code. Like the way that you structure things is still like there's a database, and you have to lay out your front end, and there's logic to it. But you don't need to have become familiar with all of the now like 100 different technologies that you need to know to run a website.
Right. We actually, Bubble is one of the partners that works with us on UpNext. So we really want them to know that, you don't need to be this super hacker coder type to actually build a platform. You can do it just, drag and drop and
100%. I mean, it's the perfect thing to build a proof of concept. I love Bubble. For some products, I think, to be honest, it could be your like forever product. For some, it's like, it starts as your core product, and then you can kind of transition to use a mix or graduate to like a full tech stack.
Yeah. You have these 2 really impressive platforms, and one is solving a storage problem, and one is trying to solve, more of a global problem, which is probably super in fashion to help the world, which is already like a huge PR thing. So how did you get those first users or customers for either platform? What was it like?
So I think like you said, one thing that's really interesting is that the TreePoints part is very fashionable.
Yeah.
I think the really key thing as well is that TreePoints, or carbon offsetting, is an aspirational product that anyone can use anytime. So we can basically sign up any friends and family, right? To start off with, that's the obvious first users. And especially when like the website isn't so neat and, maybe not all the information was there yet, like people are basically trusting us more than they're trusting the product or website. So that was definitely friends and family.
Well, yeah, because they know you. I mean,
exactly. Then on the other hand, Stasher was a very different product because rather than being an aspirational product that anyone could have but doesn't need, Stasher solved an acute problem for people. But like that problem had a very specific time frame, right? It was like, I am currently at the train station and want to go and do something for 4 or 5 hours, but I don't want to take my bag.
Like now to now.
Yeah, exactly. So like, what we always say is like, you could go out, you could give all of your friends and family 100% vouchers to store their bags, But most of them, 99% of the time, they'd be like, well, I just don't need to store my bag right now.
Yeah.
So actually, the way that we acquired customers there first was one, forum posts. Like we just went, people on like travel.stack exchange, Reddit, stuff like that. People saying like, where can I leave my luggage in blah? And just like, hey, check out this website. It was slow, but it got the first customers.
Yeah.
And then
Right. Social media is one of the best ways to go at first.
Yeah. It's free, right? And then the other thing that we did, which again, it really depends on your market. We were lucky. Because we got into something very early, station facilities weren't advertising on Google because why would they? They're in the stations, they don't need to. And it's kind of a time before people were searching. It was kind of like the 90s in a sense, like in this little niche for luggage storage near a train station, we could actually like affordably do Google ads. Now already like there's us and a few of the players have popped up, and the station facilities now know they need to compete with us. Now it's like, 4 slots immediately.
Yeah.
But
Everyone's on the lookout for you.
Yeah. Now it's competitive, less affordable. But in the beginning, it was actually like a profitable acquisition channel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which is like just as a general thing for everyone, right? Everyone thinks like, oh, I make a business and I'll just do Google and Facebook ads, right? The truth is, the truth is like to really grow in a way that gives you an advantage over someone else. If you go to the mature platforms, unless there's like I said, like a niche that is not mature within that platform, all of the advantages already been arbitraged away. All of the larger companies with more money have already driven up the price to a point where you don't have an advantage, right? So people are like, oh, Airbnb grew through Facebook and Google ads, and they're like, cool, I'll just do that. And it's like, no, Airbnb grew through Facebook and Google ads 15 years ago.
Yeah.
It's very different. Like it was affordable then. It was new.
And the biggest thing you can do, is if you see that this product is running from ear to mouth, then that's the best price you can get.
100%. Like I think I think Y Combinator is a little bit overrated. And by a little bit, I mean a lot. It's more of a machine that allows investors to not look stupid, to throw a shit ton of money at things. But there is one quote from one of I think Sam Altman, that is true, which is that most great businesses that grow quickly have a product that, is great and really solves a problem. And the specific quote is, a product that's so good, people want to tell their friends first for the implied good taste of being, the people who are the first ones like, oh, I use this thing called Airbnb,
Yeah, they want to be the guy that knew it first.
Yeah, you want to be like, oh, I found this great thing, and like it's cool to tell your friends about it because that's how useful it is or how great it was.
Totally. I mean, when I read about the TreePoints thing, I'm like, oh, I need people to know about this. I want to tell people.
Yeah, you want to. It's the implied good taste was his quote, which I love.
I mean, you're having all this success, building those 2 companies right now, and everything's growing. My question is, what is the next goal for your company? What are you aiming for?
Yeah. So in the case of Stasher, not to counteract what you just said, but it's not currently growing because of COVID. I mean, it's growing now, but year to year scale. Yeah. I mean, goal for Stasher is really just to kind of recover, right? If by January 2022 we can be kind of back to like January 2019 levels, we'll be very happy. And I would say as well that we're going to come out of it with a leaner product and a kind of leaner cost structure as well. So we'll try and be more profitable, but get back to the same point as quickly as possible. For TreePoints, really, I mean, it's just about getting users on. It's still relatively new, so we want to first of all launch a new product, and then not to counteract the point that I just made about you don't just start a product and put Facebook and Google ads, right? Yeah. We have designed the product with a business model innovation that differentiates us from competitors. That means that we think that we may have some advantage in those performance marketing channels. So we do want to test that. That would be like the next goal would be launch the new product, try some performance marketing, see whether we can kind of kickstart that growth, try some product changes to try and drive growth through referrals as well. Because like you said, it's probably a powerful channel.
For sure.
So as you said, when you started your answer that you're just kind of recovering now and that not a lot of people are using their luggage, so they don't have much place to put it other than the garage. What's a time that you experienced a real face palm kind of moment that you had to deal with it, and could you fix it, or did you just, learn from it and move on?
Well, since both companies, are still running, clearly any failure that we've dealt with,
still good. Yeah,
we've had to fix rather than move on. Failure, but yeah, I mean, the truth is that like a narrative that looking backwards over the course of years looks like success. In reality, when you're there, it feels much more like continual failures, right? Because you don't work on the successes, you work on fixing the failures.
Yeah,
right?
You keep learning.
So I mean, obviously, I don't even know if I want to call COVID a failure, because a failure kind of implies some agency over it, right? Like, if a meteor strikes your house, that's not a failure on your part. That's like
out of our control.
All right. It's like you said, you're coming out of COVID with a leaner app, with a leaner product. So I think it could be actually used as an advantage, to take that time and to actually develop a better quality product than to see it as a failure, because any failure is actually a lesson.
I mean, the TreePoints was from your free time. During, so we actually got something out of it.
Yeah, I genuinely do think that, but and this is something, particularly because this is for young entrepreneurs, it's something for them to kind of to bear in mind. I think there's a term or a phrase that I've heard that I really like, which is good entrepreneurs need to be patiently impatient, right? And I guess it's also resilient, and what I mean by that is, when people say patiently impatient, you need to be impatient in the sense of like, I don't want to wait to climb a corporate ladder. I have this thing that I want to bring into reality. So you need to be impatient enough to take the first step. But then I think the thing that a mistake a lot of people make is that they assume, Clubhouse reached 1 billion in a year. So if I don't reach at least 100 million in a year, then my startup has sucked and it's failed, right? The truth is, like, those are the exceptions, and those are incredibly overvalued Silicon Valley nonsense, right? Like, for real businesses, it can take a year, 2 years to even reach the point where you're turning over, like, real business money. Like, I'm actually going to cover my salary and not, be running at a loss. And so that's the part where you need to be patient. And part of that is you're going to experience failures, or it's going to feel like failures. It's going to feel like, oh, we're never going to get this to work. But going through that is the exact way that you learn things, is the exact way that you kind of realize, like, oh, this is how I can change my business model. Every single failure should do one of two things: make you realize this is how I fix it, and this will make it a better business, or make you realize, like, oh, actually, you know what, this isn't going to work, but it's okay because I've learned that, and now I can save the time and draw a line under it.
Yep. Learn from it and move on. Do better.
Yeah. Exactly.
I love that.
So you actually co-founded your companies with your college roommate as your co-founder. What are the 3 traits you look in with a co-founder or a business partner to grow a business? So
I think one thing to clarify actually is that I said college roommate. The whole college roommate thing is super romanticized. My co-founder and I, we work really well together. And, we knew that from studying. We knew that, like, the styles that we think and work are complementary. Like, we think in a similar way, but he's a bit more organized, and I'm a bit more kind of like erratic and impatient. But, like, together, we know that works. It worked when we were studying. Exactly, yeah. But what I want to put out to young people is, take yourself seriously, and don't co-found with people just because you're friends, right?
Totally.
I mean, if you're young, you might not know this, but it's a bit like roommates, right? Good friends aren't necessarily good roommates. You want someone who, you want to think about it a bit like, okay, how is this actually going to fit? Like, your super fun friend might not be super fun when they're leaving dishes in the sink.
Exactly. You read my mind.
So the one thing is, it's not so much of a specific trait, but, think about your fit. So fit as a trait. The second thing that I would say is integrity. 100%. Like, are they reasonable? Are they high integrity? The reason I say that is because, you should absolutely, by the way, if you're starting a company, have founders agreements and stuff. You don't want to be in the nightmare situation where like an early co-founder leaving means you lose equity, like a ton of equity. And I think the reason I say integrity, is I like to think of contracts and all of that kind of legal stuff. In reality, all of that is a bit like car insurance, right? Yes, when it comes to car insurance, if there's a crash, you're going to be really glad that you have it. But in reality, you try and avoid crashing, right? And the truth is that like 99% of the time, if you have to refer to the documents rather than just like amicably agree any differences, like maturely as adults and reasonably, you've already lost. You're going to waste a ton of time. Like, what are you going to do? Get lawyers in? You probably don't even have a proper business yet.
Yeah.
So integrity is super important. I think those are probably my two most important ones. So fit and integrity. I don't know if I can come up with a third one just for the sake of it, but
just for the sake of it, not
It was just just like a thing, but you can.
Yeah. Actually, I do have a third one, and this is actually just a general point. Empathetic, supportive, something like that. I 100% do recommend having a co-founder. It's it's emotionally difficult. There will be like anyone who's gone through the experience. You asked about failures. Like, you will go through a week feeling like Monday you feel like a failure. Tuesday you feel like you're going to be a billionaire. Wednesday you feel like a failure, just because little bits of news come in. And having someone who's on the same level is helpful. And then also, if you do reach some success and say you hire 20, 30 people, absolutely you can be friends with your employees. But when push comes to shove, if something, say there's something difficult, some difficult decisions or something, there will be points where you have to be reminded, like, okay, I am these people's employer. They're not just here to be my friends. And when you have a co-founder, it's someone to kind of be on that same level with.
You have someone to discuss it with, someone that knows where you're at.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you really started these platforms at a young age, which is of course why we contacted you and why we love it so much. So I'm sure that you've seen a bunch of advantages and disadvantages when you are younger than other people in the industry. So could you tell me an instance of something good, something bad?
I mean, the obvious disadvantage is just naivety, like lack of experience. It takes you longer to do things because you don't know how to do them. You've not done them before. People don't trust you as much because you're younger. I mean, people will always tell you, and you see this in fundraising and stuff, serial founders, as in like I have previously founded businesses, raise money way, way easier, start businesses way quicker because they've done it before. They know, right?
They know the steps.
Yeah, but to be honest, I specified serial founders, right? People love serial founders. They marginally prefer someone with corporate experience to someone with no experience as a founder, right? So the advantage is that the only way to become a serial founder is to just go and found some things and learn those things the hard way.
Right.
And then I think the other thing that I would say is that as a young person, I mean, the obvious one is that you don't have a lot of the risks that older people have, right? So, I mean, there's a very specific time in your life when you're used to living on barely anything, because you were a student or whatever, and you have no commitments to any people. So it's okay if you take a very low salary or no salary for a few months or a year, and you don't want to at the age of 30 be asking your parents like, hey, you lend me some money for a few months to survive. But at the age of 18 or 19 or 20, like maybe that's acceptable if you have
maybe you're still with your parents at 18 or 19.
Maybe you still live at home, right? So maybe you don't need that much money. There is no better time to just go out and get that experience. And the other thing is, and I see that one of the later questions is, what's your single piece of advice? I think that people, but this kind of fits it as well, and I will repeat it later because it's so important.
Good.
People misunderstand the level of risk that entrepreneurs take, right? Everyone thinks that like, oh, being an entrepreneur is a really big risk, right? If you go and start a business that costs a few £100 and I mean, people can take a year to go traveling or whatever, right? It doesn't really affect their career. You can take 2 years to go traveling and your career is still fine. There's no rush to start your professional life, right?
Right.
The risks that you're taking by starting a business as a young person are so small, right? But the potential upside is so huge. If you, I mean, even if your business fails, right? But you have any sign of like, hey, I learned some really important stuff, and this shows that I'm a person who takes initiative, et cetera, it's going to set you apart from other people, even if you decide, oh, entrepreneurship isn't for me, I'm going to go into a corporate path. Like, the returns are so asymmetric.
Yeah, you figure yourself out either way.
Yeah.
And to like you said at the beginning of this podcast, you talked about Bubble being a great tool that you use. Do you think it's the tool that the tech tool that you can't go without, which is like the lifesaver of your companies?
Well, I mean, at the moment, because we use it for TreePoints, like, yeah, it literally wouldn't exist without it.
Yeah.
But to give a couple others that I think are amazing and worth people knowing about.
Right.
One is Zapier. Zapier basically is like a drag and drop API connector. So you can connect two different apps. So for example, an email comes in and then you can automate a flow that then does something in a G sheet somewhere so you can store data, or like you can do it that someone fills a form and then it automatically, I don't know, sends an email or whatever else, or there's tons and tons of possible connections they have. Check the things that are on there. That it's an amazing tool. It's very reasonably priced. Again, has a free tier that you can basically run your MVP on, whatever it is that you want to do. Lots of people, if not in Bubble, like Zapier is even easier than that, build their MVPs by just sticking sheets and stuff together with, they make a front page, a landing page. When something happens there, they use Zapier to send it to a Google Sheet, which is their mini database. And then they connect that to emails, and they have a product. So that's definitely one. And I also really like, I mean, this is a super simple product. It's not a lifesaver, but I do like Todoist. I use it as my to-do list.
Yeah, it's always comfortable to have everything in front of you, and check stuff off is always super satisfying, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah, and to share it with other people as well.
Sure.
So we have a cheesy question up next for you. I hope you'll enjoy it. Which entrepreneur or entrepreneurs inspire you the most these days, and you think we should also know their name, if not Elon Musk, of course?
I don't want to say Elon Musk. It's funny because Elon Musk obviously is cool in a lot of ways. The thing that I like about him, and that we kind of reflected on it ourselves, was that he had one or two things where like he made the money and built a base for himself. And then he did the things where it's like, okay, this is the cool shit that I want to change the world with.
Yeah.
In some sense, we kind of, had that in mind. We were like, okay, we're making Stasher, we're learning a lot, build a base. And then it's like, okay, what are the causes we really care about? Climate change, built TreePoints. But, he's also on a more personal level, sometimes not the most inspiring person based on his Twitter. The line between insane and genius is often blurred, right? And again, I hate to say it because it's so cliche, but I do think Bezos is probably the most interesting entrepreneur. And the reason,
wrong with him.
Yeah, you can't. But I mean, I want to give some more specifics than just because he started Amazon. If you look at the way that he operates, like listen to interviews of him in the 90s, right? And he clearly had a vision for building Amazon and where Amazon was going to go, right? He clearly kind of thought it out. It wasn't kind of like, I kind of work it out as I go. I feel like doing this, I feel like doing this. Like, he thought about it. And I think that's very impressive. I want to think about someone maybe a little more niche. Man, nothing's coming to mind. I mean, there's lots of entrepreneurs who don't inspire me. Put it like that.
That you learn from. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, every entrepreneur is something you can learn about, right? Or learn from. one who really doesn't inspire me is Zuckerberg. I just can't imagine having that much money and power and not saying, I want to use it for good.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care if the price goes down. I'm already so rich.
So you have a lot of these good and strong traits about yourself. Which trait do you feel is the most weakest, and you need to like outsource it for to your coworkers or for your teammates?
So I mentioned earlier.
Organizing.
Yeah. So my co-founder is very organized, right? I'm not very organized, and so between like organizing like strategy and stuff more formally, I would say that like he definitely helps balance me for that. But then also with employees, like loads of employees that I work with, for example, in more kind of salesy roles, will say like, oh, I'm a good natural networker and a good natural kind of like salesperson.
Right.
But I'm very good at starting things and not very good at like details and finishing things, right? But actually, when you're working with a sales team, that's perfect because it means that I open conversations, both using the gravity of the co-founder title, and because, I'm like, oh, these are people that we should talk to, and I'll use whatever network and people I've met and, get a conversation going. And then when it's like, okay, let's actually like close a deal, then I can pass it down to someone else. And for them, they're like, that's great because, that means that you're giving me a flow of deals that I can close. So I'm doing well at my job.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the term that you used, compensate, is exactly right. Like no one is 100% well-rounded. In some ways, it's better to be great at some things and bad at others, and then find other people who compensate for your weaknesses.
Totally. So that was great. I loved the answer, actually, that you have all these people and you guys are just making each other whole.
Yep.
So another cheesy question.
Yep.
We talked about the advice that you're gonna say again, but I'm sure that you have thought of other things to add on. So what piece of advice do you have for everyone listening?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just to repeat it again, like the costs, particularly at like the teen or student time frame in your life, particularly living at home, the costs of trying to start something are so low, the benefits are so high. Even if it fails and you do end up applying to corporate jobs, people will respect the experience and the things that you've learned through it. Like 100%, you should not underestimate that. Otherwise, I think one other piece of advice that I give to people, not just for entrepreneurship, for life, is to think about value, right? So I think one of the biggest issues that we have in the modern economy is that there's a disconnect between money and value, right? And that's why people are angry about 08. That's why there's lots of people who are angry now, right? There seems to be this thing where it's like, if you're making a lot of money, people assume that you're sucking value from other places rather than adding value, right? And I think one of the main drivers for most people becoming an entrepreneur is, I want to make the world better. I want to have impact. I want to add value, right? Entrepreneurs make money by adding value and then taking a small cut of it, enough to cover the costs of creating that value. And then any little surplus is theirs to keep as profit. Even if you're not an entrepreneur, right? Whatever it is that you do, like, please, for the sake of society,
do
and
something good.
Yeah, and for this, and to clarify, my idea of doing good is very broad, right? Like I run a luggage storage company, right? But on a kind of value basis, okay, we're providing a useful service to people. It's an employer of tens of people, and the people who use our service save time and money, which they recycle that aggregate demand into other services.
Yeah, you are solving a problem that
exactly.
want to solve.
Exactly. So just please don't become, an investment banker or corporate lawyer. I mean, even they have some parts that are useful, but some parts that are maybe more value extracting.
Yeah, that we probably wished weren't so useful, but they're there.
Yeah, they're there. I just want more of the best people in society to go and do things that matter. I mean, there's a whole economic kind of basis or background to this as to why. It's because, it's so hard to live nowadays and buy a house. Like people say, oh, I'll become a banker or a consultant for like 5 years, and then I'll do what I really want to do, right?
Right.
Which is a shame that that's an economic reality, and I accept that. Like, I'm not trying to be naive about it, but there are other options, like become a developer, become a product manager. You can work for companies who build real useful products, and you can make like a meaningful career with a good salary.
And learn from it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm making the interview really long, but like I have so much to say on this. Like,
but we like listening. It's okay.
Yeah, I feel like one thing we've discussed this a lot. You know, a lot of people get Sunday blues, or like it's Sunday evening, they're like, oh, you know, I'm stressed about work tomorrow. Like,
So for us, it's Saturday blues.
oh yeah, of course, because you guys start on Sunday, right?
Right.
But yeah, like as a general rule of thumb, I don't want to like do too broad strokes, but as a general rule of thumb, if you are feeling that kind of serious stress on a Sunday evening, you need to think like, what am I doing with my life? Because work is going to be about 80% of my waking life. So I may as well do something that, you know, I want to go in and do, right?
Enjoy myself, yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's fun. I mean,
Yes,
right, working is fun.
Yeah.
I mean, working is fun. Creating a change, like you said, is fun. And actually, it goes into this bonus question, that another bonus one is, how important is it for young entrepreneurs to think about social change when creating a business? Like you said, social change is a big thing right now. And how do you, what do you think about that topic?
I think it feeds into what I was saying about value. Like, don't get me wrong. If there's social causes you care about, like, you know, I run a carbon offsetting platform. Clearly, I care about climate change. That's great. But I would also say, just like, I would say that I fundamentally, you know, I wouldn't say I'm particularly right wing. I'd probably say I'm more left wing. But I do believe that capitalism generally works, right? So we were talking about that whole value thing, right? You know, if you are adding value to society, you're part of that positive social change, right? Because that process of people building things that are useful and solve problems, it's the thousands of entrepreneurs in the world doing that, building on top of each other. That means that life in the 21st century is, you know, for almost everyone, better than the 20th century. And for everyone in the 20th century, you know, think about the changes between then and the 15th century to think like, okay, it's the compounding of all of these little value adds that makes life so much better. So you can contribute to social change without like being a charity or working at a charity.
Right.
Yeah.
You can always do your part.
Yep. Exactly.
So last question, a little bit of an easier one. You don't have to get too deep into it. If you could have any superpower ever, what would it be?
I did think about this one because I saw it ahead of time.
Yes.
So I think it would be, at first I was going to say the ability to control time, right?
Of course, that's always comfortable.
Yeah, which is, you know, but maybe that's too broad and too powerful. And then I thought, you know, the guy, the Flash?
Of course.
Yeah, it would probably be that, because it's applicable just in everyday life. It effectively gives you the ability to teleport, and because you can move so quickly, you effectively can control time anyway. So.
And I'm working out on the way. That's
That's exactly what I say every time. I mean, super speed is just like the best, because you can actually control time because you do everything faster. So.
Yeah, exactly.
So great choice. And I always find, you know, the people that we're talking with, and the last question that we always ask with the superpower thing, I always find them picking a superpower that will actually help them, like I'm asking them and that they'll actually get it. Like, it's going to happen and I want it to help my business. And we had someone that said, I want the power to not need to sleep. I mean, it's like...
Oh, that would actually be a great superpower. I mean, I don't know if that's a superpower or just like a slightly...
An ability, yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, that would be amazing. You'd like double your life effectively.
Yeah, pretty much. You'd have an entire day and you'd use it all.
For sure.
So it was great hearing from you, Anthony. I really enjoyed hearing everything that you have, that you're offering to the world. And I hope that we will hear a lot more of TreePoints. And I can't wait to start traveling again so I can put my luggage somewhere.
Awesome. It was nice to meet you guys. Thank you very much.
Very nice to meet you too.
Cheers.
Bye.